it's innate. And I think a lot of us who are, heads down working every day forget that we need to play.
I'm very excited today to be chatting with director Simon Ennis and game designer Elizabeth Hargrave, who designed Wingspan. Am I right? Is
Yep.
that the title is Wingspan? And Simon, of course, directed The Hobby, Tales from the Tabletop. Um, Thank you so much for the time, both of you. Honestly, I really appreciate it.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.
Honestly, Simon, let's start with you. This film is incredible. This is such an inviting and warm documentary in so many ways. Um, how did it start? I know you're in it briefly. Can you tell us how the hobby began?
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in telling stories about subcultures. I love kind of getting into worlds that have their own language and have their own, what's the right word? Like have their own, I don't know, just basically a shared passion, shared obsession. Because I identified that with that a lot. And about 2018, I happened to go to Gen Con, which is the biggest board game convention in North America. You see it in the film. There's like 70, 80,000 people. And I was tagging along with some board gamers, but I wasn't really a board gamer myself. I didn't really know of it. I don't know that I'd even actually played Settlers of Catan. And I go into this giant convention and my eyes were just like open wide and my mind was blown. And I couldn't believe that this whole world existed and that I knew nothing about it. So I left with, I think I probably had to buy, another piece of luggage to carry all these games that I'd never heard of and was just buying. And then over the next few years, I just got so deeply into the hobby myself, and thought, "Boy, this is something that the rest of the world needs to know about. This is an amazing community. It's filled with like incredible people, wonderful characters. And yeah, if I didn't know about this thing, it's like, most people, and it's a cliche in our hobby culture that, if you say you're into board games, people will say, "Oh, you mean like Monopoly?" And it's absolutely not that. So over the next couple of years, it takes a while to get a film financed. So I was doing research, but I was also just getting deeper and deeper into my own obsession. And then eventually we got a green light. We got some money from Telefilm in May of 2020, and I couldn't even shoot for almost 2 years because nobody was getting together to actually play board games. So at that point, I was just playing a lot of Wingspan with my wife. And then when things opened up again, my friend Dan, who's also in the movie, we just were getting deeper and deeper into this obsession. And then finally, masks started coming off and we could actually go out into the world and film it. And that whole time I had to just remind myself of like who I was before I became obsessed with this because the movie is for a general audience. Obviously gamers, will love it and see little details that non-gamers won't know, but the movie is really an invitation to just the general population to have a look in this wonderful world.
I love that you use the word invitation because that's how I felt about this. And I have to say, um, you know, I Gen Con, I've never been, but I have friends that go every year, and they're always like, "You got to see this thing. It's insane. There are so many people. It's this huge thing, and seeing it on screen, I'm like, okay, now I know what they're talking about." But talking about inviting, Elizabeth with Wingspan, excuse me, that's going to sound great on the audio. Anyway, with Wingspan, one of the things that we see in this film is you talk about how people said, nobody's going to want to play a game about birds.
Mhm.
But this was your story. This was what you had to do. What is that like? What is the mindset in creating a game, and what is it like inviting other people into your story?
It is so hard to break into the board game industry that I think a lot of people start designing just thinking, I'm gonna just make a game for my friends and family, like something that I'm really into. It may never get published because it's really hard to get published, but I'm just gonna. So that's how I started. I'm just like, what would it be like to have a board game about something that I'm really into? I was a birder already. And but then as I played it with more and more people and kept iterating and iterating, it felt like it might have legs. So I went and published it, went and pitched it to publishers. Yeah.
And the response has been phenomenal.
And there was
Just under, I'm
incredible.
underselling it by saying phenomenal. It's been huge.
We sold 2 million copies. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's so awesome. That's so cool. I would love to hear from you both. One of the things it said early on in the film is it talks about the hunger to play. And I mean, even the opening scene where we're talking about we're in the museum and we're looking at, I love where the gentleman's talking about how well, they were probably guarding and then dusting the dust off. Um, what is it? Why do we have a hunger to play in your minds?
Ooh, you might have thought of this more than me. I'm not really sure.
I mean, I think it's just something innate. You see it in a lot of animals too that they play. It's innate. And I think a lot of us who are, heads down working every day forget that we need to play, that it's rejuvenating, it's connecting. We're social animals. So we don't just need to play, we need to play with other people.
Mm.
Uh, and there are lots of ways to do that. Board games is one of many ways that we play, but it is a very structured way that there's this whole community that you can tap into and go to a board game cafe or an open game night and just go meet up with other people across the table from you and play with a physical object and turn off your phone for a couple hours.
Yeah, I couldn't really put it better myself. The only thing that I guess I would add is that, I'm board games is one of many obsessions I have. I'm obsessed with movies, I'm obsessed with music. I think something about the interactivity of it is really, really special. It's like, I'll watch as many movies as I can, but you're sitting there, you're taking something in. There is a bit of an intellectual exercise in it, but it's still a lot more passive. Whereas if you're sitting across the table with somebody, and especially these kinds of modern board games, the kind of post-Catan stuff, it's like they really are activating a lot of parts of your brain and making you think, and you lose yourself in this kind of flow state as you're doing it. And then that's just what you're doing. But around that, as Elizabeth was saying, it's like, you have other people around the table. My weekly board game meetup at my friend Dan's house, it's like, so much about the games, but there's also, what are we going to order for food today? What music are we going to listen to? The kind of inside jokes we have with one another. So yeah, it's a beautiful way to spend your time.
I'm glad you both said that too. And actually, Simon, you just mentioned movies. Um, for me, that was my community builder. But it's one thing to watch it. It's until we have something like this, like we're having right now, where we can dialogue about it. That's when community forms. And I think you're right with board games. It's such a natural setup.
Right, it's happening while you play the game. It's like it's an entirely interactive experience instead of sitting there for a couple hours watching something and then maybe talking about it afterwards or not. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is there something disarming about it as well? Like I would love to hear from you both because I mean we hear these stories of people like finding community. It's one thing like when I look at a poker tournament on television, if you will, I don't think that those guys are hanging out afterwards. They might be. But you see the tension. But with a board game, is there something more disarming about it that brings people in?
Well, I mean, obviously the difference with poker, it's like, there isn't like a lot of money on the line. Like usually in the movie
So
there's the World Series of board games and there is there. But like, 99.9% of all board gaming that happens in the world is just kind of friends or maybe strangers getting together to just like have a nice time together. I mean, I've heard this, going around and talking to people for the movie. I've heard this from a lot of people who are, very introverted and also people who are on the autism spectrum, that it's a very inviting stage to get together because, the rules are literally right there. There's rules for the games. You know what you're doing. And so that kind of takes the pressure off of a social situation for a lot of people that, may be stressful just going and meeting strangers and what are we going to talk about and stuff. But here it's like, this is something that we've all agreed to do, that we all like, and it just sets the stage that everybody can be, can feel at home in.
and some people care about winning and losing and can be very competitive and get caught up in whether they win the game or not. But I think mostly the rules about how you win the game are just the structure that enable you to have that experience more than they are something that you actually care about. So you need to know what your goal is to be able to engage in the game, but your goal is really sitting around the table.
Right, right. No, that's fair. That's absolutely true. I would love to hear from you both about seeing some of the old games. I mean, we see these like that was a wild experience watching this, and I remember once I saw a documentary on the history of Monopoly, and that blew me away. But what did you take away from seeing these games from like 1885 and these ridiculously old things. And what does that tell you about them and us?
I mean, yeah, the movie opens with one that's like from
2,500.
Yeah,
500 years
2,500
ago.
years ago.
So that, I mean, I think that just reinforces what we were saying about how innate the drive to play games is. Like we've been doing it for millennia. But yeah, to see some of the like 19th century stuff and we went to the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester and they have like one of the original copies of the Landlord's Game, which then turned into sort of Monopoly. Um which has a whole documentary worth of story itself. But yeah, what is that like? It made me feel a little bit more like I'm part of a lineage of
Mm.
designers. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me as well, I mean, I just love the look of those games. I love the aesthetic of those games. I probably wouldn't enjoy playing some of them as much because a lot of them are just you roll the dice, you move around, you try to get to the end, but you're not really doing so much. The game's kind of playing you. But the artwork is just like it absolutely floors me. So I remember when we were in those archives in the basement of the Strong Museum, like just kind of getting the same feeling you do in an art gallery or an old church or something like that, like just being close to this amazing material and the feeling, the sort of vibe that it was emitting. It was just incredible. That game actually, the ancient Mesopotamian game, was one of the first games I ever played as a little kid. My dad had a copy published from the British Museum. And it wasn't the one that you see in there. It was like just printed on a regular board game board, but it had all this ancient Mesopotamian imagery on it. And I remember being like 4 or 5, because that's a real just like roll and move your pieces around game. 4 or 5 and playing it, and I can remember getting lost in the imagery on that board, like these weird eyes. I mean, it's not like hieroglyphics, but it's like whatever the Mesopotamian kind of versions of it is. And I remember just feeling like I was in another world playing that game at like 4 or 5. And I still kind of do. I mean, that's why I got into Elizabeth's game so much because I love just being among the birds. It like gives you that feeling that you're in this aviary. So I love getting lost in it. And those 19th century games, like you really can just lose yourself in the artwork.
And they're real cultural artifacts. A lot of them are sort of teaching games. They're very moralistic games. They're very much a product of their times. And then you see that also the precursor to Monopoly was very much a like anti-capitalist actually sort of teaching game. Yeah. And so it also sort of makes me reflect on like what are we teaching people with games that are coming out now, which I think a lot of games do have sort of points of view or opinions about the world.
And just, I mean, that's not this film, but the learning about Monopoly and the history of it, like they're like the fact that it was anti-capitalist blows my mind because it's the opposite of where it is now, of course. Um,
Well, the fact that it was sort of co-opted and turned into what it turned into actually probably says even more about
yeah,
capitalism than landlord game
says a lot
eventually
about us. Yeah.
originally did.
Well, I would love to know. I know we're starting to run out of time here, but um, what in your mind makes a great game? What is the type of game that draws you in? And I don't mean like a name of a game, but what aspects of a game? Because you talk about, well, if it's just rolling dice moving around the board, but what is it? What do you look for in a game?
I want to have interesting decisions on almost every turn. I want those decisions to matter for the outcome of the game.
Okay.
I want some highs and lows. I don't want to be doing the same thing every turn. Like if there can be a big reveal or just like those moments when like the dice come out just the way you want or not. Yeah, you want some moments like that.
Yeah, I,
Um,
I I completely agree. I would have said interesting decisions as well. The other thing I would add, because I completely agree with what Elizabeth just said, is I love when a game, and it can be a very logic, like almost mathy based game, not a story game, but I love when a game has a third act. So at a certain point in the game, if you're playing for half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, however long the game is, a certain point you realize, oh my gosh, things are really escalating and things seem to be getting faster. And am I going to be able to do all the stuff I can do before the end? Oh my gosh. Great games, great modern board games have that a lot. And it's I mean, it really feels like the structure of a three-act movie that it's like kind of a slow start. Oh, we're getting to know the world. Then you're in the sort of meat of it. You're doing your thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, am I gonna make it? Am I gonna make it? And that feeling is always terrific.
It just sounds like you both are describing a great story. Like to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest, that's what it sounds like to me as I'm listening to it. I'm like, okay, well, Simon, you mentioned a third act. Elizabeth, you're talking about making decisions that affect the outcome.
I think
Like,
it's less a story than an experience because most of these games, and I think that this is a misconception that some people have, most of these games don't have like an actual narrative. Like it's not like, a character going on a journey. Some do, some definitely do. But this is more like the sort of first, second, and third act in the experience of you doing whatever you're doing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I really appreciate the chance to chat with you both. This film is wonderful. And I just as we wrap, what do you hope people take away from the hobby?
Well, first of all, I hope people leave with a smile because as you know, as you were talking about, like it is hopefully just a very positive experience and a real invitation to look into this world. And thematically, to me, it's about, what do we do with our leisure time? What do we do with our spare time when it's not work, when we're not dealing with responsibilities? How do you fill that time? I think that that says a lot about us personally and us as humans. So that's more the kind of like philosophical thing there. But mostly I just want to give people a good time and a look into a world that maybe they've didn't even realize existed.
Well, and to flip what we said before, that just sounds like a great game as well. Uh, Honestly, Elizabeth, Simon, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. The film is wonderful, and Elizabeth, I continue to hope you for wish you success with Wingspan and whatever's next. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye bye.